If you dig deep into the archives of WSFA 12 News and some of the people who brought you some of the earliest stories, you'll find John Moore. He just may be the longest living WSFA employee, and he's got some stories to tell about working here and the work he did. I'm Bethany Davis, and this is Being Real.
Sponsored by Bryan Jewelry.
When you call me, I'll answer. And if you need someone to hold your hand, when you're lonely, I'll be there. I will give you everything I have.
Promise your everything with a diamond from Bryan Jewelry.
How did you arrive here at this station? How did you come to work here?
Like I say, I met Charles Caton and knew he had an opening, and Stan Tarleton, I used to run against him all the time when I was at 32 filming, and we became big buddies. So he says, hey, there's an opening, you want to come over? So I came over to Charles, and he hired me from 32 after a couple of years, and it was a great honor, great honor. And from 68 till then, and I worked with Bob Gammakerla and Ralph Williams, George Mitchell, and of course Stan Tarleton and Tal Eaton, and of course Phil Snow was a sportsman, and he also did some weather. And of course, Ralph Williams was the weatherman. And that's changed a lot too. Ralph used to use a chalk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean,
those were the days.
Oh, man. Goes back.
So is this your hometown? Is this where you're from?
Randolph County,
Okay.
metropolis of Wedowee.
Wow.
You ever been to Wedowee?
I have been, I don't know if I've stopped in Wedowee. I have been through Wedowee.
Yeah, Wedowee's about halfway between Auburn and Anniston.
Yes.
On 431. Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever actually stopped there.
Well, Jeff is familiar with Wedowee, and after I left there, after I graduated school, left, Alabama Power Company backed up the Tallapoosa River and built Lake Wedowee.
Wow.
So it's a popular place now.
It is a popular place now. Yeah, people do know about it now. So was this a station you grew up watching? Did you know of Channel 12 before you came to Montgomery?
Well, no. Well, when my first full-time radio job out of broadcasting school was Tallahassee, so I saw Channel 12 then, and I knew when Frank McGee got his big start with NBC. Of course, the reason he got the big start because he did such an outstanding job covering the civil rights stuff. And of course, he was just, of course, I didn't work with him, but I'd seen him on TV, and I was familiar then after coming to Tallahassee. So, but no, I grew up watching Atlanta TV, WSB, and those up there because that was in East Alabama. Yeah. Now, people in Randolph County, and my mother, later on when I worked at 12, she lived in Roanoke, and she could see me on the news because she had cable.
Oh.
And so the cable gave you some additional coverage area. But yeah, I was familiar with Channel 12 a long time ago.
Yeah.
It was.
I imagine you covered some pretty incredible stories in those years when we think about what Montgomery was like in the late 60s and early 70s.
Oh, you were, 12, of course, I know you're still popular, but 12 was the dominant source in the total 13 county DMA. I mean, it knew, of course, I know 8 and 32 had news too, but 12 was primarily the dominant.
It's just still a pretty dominant source of news. But what do you think it was in those years that brought so many people, so many eyes to this particular station? Why was this such a dominant station, do you think?
Well, covering the news and the weather and the sports. Carl Stevens and Phil Snow did such an excellent job covering Auburn and Alabama. Of course, they covered Troy State and the other ones too.
Yeah.
And I realize it's not Troy State now; it's Troy University. It used to be Troy State, just like Jacksonville State.
When you think about some of the stories that you covered while you were here, what stands out as some of your favorite stories, some of the most important stories, maybe?
Well, I enjoyed covering the legislature, and one thing I telling Jeff, after I left here and then went in part-time in radio sales, I also had a part-time job because I was reading clerk in the House of Representatives. Joe McCorkadale, the Honorable House Speaker from Jackson, had an opening at the time I left 12. And of course, he was familiar with me because I'd interviewed him several times. He said, "How would you like to be reading clerk?" I said, "Oh, that'd be a great honor." So I did that about 5 years. And that was quite an honor, being there, working for the people who were elected by the people. And Joe McCorkadale was a heck of a nice man. It really was.
But you interviewed a number of people who went on to be, or maybe already were, some pretty significant history makers, not just for our state, but really for the entire nation. Who were some of your bigger name interviews, and what did you talk to them about?
Well, George Wallace is one of them. Then I didn't interview him, but I covered Dr. King twice. One time when I was 32, and then shortly after I came here in February of age 68, I covered his speech just prior to his leaving, going to Memphis. And the things I don't want to get in politics, but things I admired about him, as you're probably familiar, he says, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. And don't judge a person by the color of the skin, but by their character. Now that said a lot.
Yeah.
That said a lot, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
And of course, there was a lot of big names in that had a lot of good philosophy. George Wallace. What's so ironic about him is he soon graduated from that racist attitude they had for him because he became so moderated, so to speak. Of course, he was always a politician. He was not a racist. He was just a politician. And he moved in, and the work that he did with the junior colleges and trade schools and with health, when he was elected last time, he had a sizable black vote, believe it or not.
How would you say this town has stayed the same over the years?
Well, there's still emphasis on the capital city. Mm-hmm. A lot of emphasis on that, and the historic places you can go see, and it's just a remarkable place.
It must be, because you didn't go very far. You've retired, but you're still in this area.
Yeah, they live in the metropolis of Wetumpka, and called the City of Natural Beauty.
Well, it is very beautiful. There are lots of very beautiful places.
It is.
Why did you not leave and go very far? Why did you not go back to Wedowee? Why was this your new home?
Well, I started off part-time at the radio station in Roanoke, WLR, while I was in radio school. I tell you about radio school in Atlanta. I was Atlanta School of Radio and Television. And people ask me, well, what kind of degree did you get? Well, I got a scholarship, not a scholarship, but a diploma and a certificate from the Atlanta School of Radio and Television. And I got my degree from the School of Hard Knocks.
Which might be more valuable.
I learned a lot going away, but it has some good teachers, surely did.
It's so funny you say that. We talk a lot around here about how so much of this job cannot be taught in a classroom.
No.
That this is so much of what we do is kind of like you either have it or you don't.
Right.
And you really just have to learn along the way. What were some of the lessons that you felt like you just kind of learned as you went?
Well, I had a good teacher and the news director, Charles Caton from Andalusia, Alabama, who graduated from the University of Alabama. He was just a great man, a great director. He, as I told Jeff earlier, that the main things he pointed out was cover the facts, no emotions, and no opinions. And look at your national news nowadays, what do you get? All three.
Well, don't you know, as human beings, it's really hard to not have emotions or
Well,
opinions.
it is. You see a bad situation, you can't help but be a little emotional about it. That's just a bad situation, that's the way it is.
And I think it's just our natural tendency is to form an opinion about something. I say all the time, well, they pay me to not have an opinion, which is harder than it sounds, especially when you form relationships with people. Even though we'll take politics for instance, they're politicians. We're not supposed to have opinions about politicians, but we form relationships with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard. It's our job is to form relationships
Right,
with them in
right.
order to stay in touch and to keep the information
is.
flowing. It's hard to not form opinions, good or bad, about them.
Right, that's true. That's true. And you generally know how you can move as far as with their personality and how you can approach them without offending them.
Yes.
And to get to the truth.
So how did you keep your emotions and your opinions out of your work?
It was kind of hard to do, but you just had to move along and try to stay clear of the opinions. It's hard to do. You're not perfect.
No. Do you find yourself still, when you turn on the news or when you pick up a story to read, do you find yourself still struggling with the lack of emotions or trying to take your emotions or your opinions out of things and just reading the facts? Do you
Right.
find it hard to read
It would be
news
hard, yes.
without opinions?
It would be hard to do, yes.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that, but it's tough. Charles was, tell you how strict Charles was. Stan Tarleton and I went down to Slocum, Alabama. At that particular time, I told Jeff I grew up on a small farm in Randolph County, but I saw the most tomatoes down in Slocum I'd ever seen in my life. And my gosh. And they had a big reception place there where the farmers would bring their tomatoes. And we doing a story about them, and so they were pleased that we came down to do that. So they gave us about 3 baskets of tomatoes to take to share with the people in the newsroom. But Charles Caton wouldn't take any. He said, no, that's payola. We don't get paid to do news. It was okay if we had them. He didn't want them. That's how strict he was.
Wow.
He was not going to accept tomatoes.
But when you call me, I'll answer. And if you need someone to hold your hand, and when you're lonely, I'll be there. I will give you everything I have.
Promise your everything with a diamond from Bryan Jewelry.
What else? What are some other lessons that you learned about the day-to-day job, the flow of the job that you couldn't have learned without doing the job itself?
Well, I was impressed with Phil Snow and Ralph Williams doing the weather. I mean, they seem like it just rolls off the top of their head. This is the way it is, and it was very impressive.
Yeah. What was a normal day like for you when you came to work here? Was there a normal day?
Oh yeah, well, doing the 7:25 news, I had to be in a little earlier. And speaking of that, you probably heard this in reference to Bob Howell. He made the comment. I knew him. I didn't work with him, but I knew him before he got in the news. But he told the story about telling some college students who inquired about being in TV. He said, well, if you like getting up early in the morning, working late at night, working on weekends and holidays, you'll love it. Which is true.
It sure is.
Very true. Now, he was a giant in the business. He was good. He was really good.
He was. He sure was.
Yeah.
That's true. We do work. We work a lot of nights and weekends and holidays because the news is the news. You know,
Right.
it doesn't seem to
Right.
have a clock for some reason.
No, you went in. Nobody stopped the clock.
Yeah.
Now, they can stop the clock in the legislature, but you can't stop the reality clock. You got to keep going
Yeah.
with the news story.
That's true. So we found you because you wrote this letter to the station that said it was a pleasant surprise to you to see your picture on our 70th anniversary.
Slide.
Yes. Why was that a surprise to you?
It was just a surprise. I saw it up there. I'm in the right-hand corner with the black Bolex camera. And I said, my goodness. Of course, I was much younger then.
Well, that was just a few years ago, 1970-ish.
Man, it was something. Yeah, we shot film back then.
Yeah.
And I left shortly before, I guess, shortly after I left, 12 went into videotape. And it was interesting. Editing the film was interesting. I enjoyed it.
Really?
Oh yeah, we had an editing table, and you kind of had the seconds marked out on the table, and you just stretch it out. It's very easy.
It's very easy for you. I think these days we would find it a little more complicated than we would like. It was very time consuming, and you had to be very pay attention to every
Right.
little detail.
Right. You had to time it out so that there'd be enough film for the audio
Yeah.
and the voiceover, and it was interesting.
So when you saw your picture pop up on the TV like that as we're celebrating our 70th anniversary, what kind of memories did that bring up for you?
I just thought about the times we were out there in the field shooting film, and bringing it back home. We primarily went from black and white to color film.
How
And,
big of a transition was that? Was that
No, they just it was a transition for the machines. Make sure they had the projectors that would project color film, and it was something new for Tal Eaton. He ran the processing machine. He had to readjust his machinery to cover color film. But he did an excellent job. He did an excellent job in processing the film.
Yeah.
And of course, he processed the film for the Auburn Review too.
Oh.
When Carl Stigmans would be there with Shug Jordan,
Very neat.
and you probably heard the old saying, "You're so right, Carl." Well, that's where he came from with that TV show.
I think we still say that around here every now and then.
You're so right, Carl.
So what are your thoughts when you watch now?
Well, I think you have a good team going. You and Mark do an excellent job, and the two in the on 10 o'clock news do a great job, and the tradition continues.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you, we talk a lot about how we are really just sort of driving the ship, just trying to keep it between the buoys that people like you have already put into place. That you guys built up this place to be a pretty incredible place to work.
Well, one little thing that I don't mean to be critical, but I just say it like it is. we filled up the complete 30 minutes of news and sports and weather. So at the end of the news, we didn't have the chit-chat happy talk.
Does it bother you a little bit to hear that?
We didn't do that. we used up all the time for news and stuff.
So some things have changed a little.
That's changed a little bit. Yeah.
Yes, they
That's
have.
fine if you want to do that. That's fine. You got personalities that are sharing people with people. That's all right. I'm just saying we didn't have that because we filled it up with news, sports, and weather.
Yes.
And I hope they don't feel bad about saying that. I mean, that's just the way it was.
That's just it. Yeah, that's just the way it was. I was so excited to meet you today. I was excited about you coming in, and then you shook my hand and you said, we go way back. I didn't even realize, and I honestly can't remember. I can't believe that you remember me as such a young,
Right.
a young person, a young employee. I was only a part-timer when we actually worked together
Right.
at Channel 32, not here. But I guess explain to me, number one,
Well, you were
how
just a
you
natural.
even remember that and how you connected this. We're coming up on 30 years ago when that happened.
Well, like I said, even though I'm an old codger, sometime I can still remember. Yeah, you were very talented then, and you did a good job on what you were doing, and doing the interviews and the reporting and everything. You did fine.
Well,
So
thank
you
you.
started off early.
I'm so honored when you said that. I was blown away and completely just honored to know that you would even have known who I was at that point in time, because I was just starting out. To say my feet were wet is even an exaggeration. Like they were barely even. I had barely even touched the water.
Well,
at
that was a good
point.
place to get started because you had a lot of leadway to do things and to learn, and you did.
Yeah,
You did a good job.
that's very true. Since you've been here and you've toured the place, you talked a little bit about the studio, but this is a much different where we are now.
Oh man, it's much different. Yes, it is.
This is a much different place than where we were
Oh,
just
man.
5 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
It was.
What are your thoughts, and can you imagine yourself working in this building?
I'd have to get used to it.
Yeah.
I would have to get used to it, and primarily, of course, Jeff told me about the parking situation. Then I'd have to get used to that.
It's a little different.
And at first, I pulled up to the indoor parking, you might say, down there, but I thought that's what you do, but it never did open up. I said, well, I'm not welcome here.
It doesn't open for us either.
How about that?
Yeah, you have to have special privileges apparently.
I thought it was going to be something like the Good building at the hospital. You know, you can just drive around and around, going to the floor you're going to, and get out and go inside. Not here.
Not here, no sir. But when you see this place and how technologically advanced we have become as a TV station.
Oh man.
I mean, it was a huge jump even for us in 2020 to go from one place to the next. But I'm just curious to know your thoughts, your impressions.
Well, as big as it is, at least you got your divisions of the different people and segments, and so you seem to be well organized, although it's a bigger place.
It is.
And of course, Jeff took me around, and I saw the different ones, so very impressive.
Yeah. Can you imagine working here, yourself working here, and turning stories here, editing here, and standing in front of the cameras that have nobody
I'd
behind
have to
them?
get used to it. I really would. It'd be a new education, so to speak.
Right. It'd be a whole new school of hard
A
knocks.
whole new school, yeah.
It sure would. As we celebrate this 70th anniversary, we've talked to a lot of different people about what Channel 12 has meant to them. What does Channel 12, I'm curious, what does Channel 12 mean to you now, but what did Channel 12 mean to you in 1970?
Well, I enjoy seeing Channel 12 now, and of course, I was honored to be able to come in and be a part of the team, so to speak. Like I say, had the utmost respect for Charles Caton, a great newsman, and working with George Mitchell and Bob Gammakerla and Stan Tarleton, who was a great videographer, and Tal Eaton and others that worked, of course, knowing and working with Phil Snow and Carl Stevens, and it just a great honor. And then, of course, the ladies up in the offices, they were very nice, and the receptionist, everybody, just big teamwork, very nice.
I just appreciate you being here. It's been such an honor.
Well, I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here.
Pick your brain and to share your story. Yes. What an honor to sit down and catch up with John and hear his take on what covering news meant in his day, so we can better understand the legacy of WSFA 12 News.